going on? Blossom is back, and welcome back to another episode of Top Drives. Now, the summer games are upon us, and it is the next legendary challenge that you can get in Top Drives. A lot of good prizes up for grabs here, like the Dodge Avenger and the M1 Pro car. Both of those are the ones that I'm most excited about, but obviously the legendaries are on the line, and obviously those legendary prize cars that you can win are unfortunately kind of recycled, right? You're getting the MC12 to come back, the Carrera GT's coming back, the CN's coming back. I don't know. I feel like if you won the Carrera GT or the MC12 from the Tri-Series, I don't know about you, but I would feel a little robbed, you know? Now they're just coming out like flies, like everyone's getting them now. I mean, it's not only one legendary challenge, they've come back for two. And then they've thrown in another one, they've thrown in the car as well. The car is a pretty cool one. Definitely, if I complete the challenge, the car is what I'm going to be going for. But obviously, I'm going to be reviewing the Summer Games pack. This is the carbon fiber that has came out alongside the challenge. This is the pack that you need to open to get you the cars that will help you throughout the challenge that you can complete, I think, throughout the next 2 weeks or 1 week. Usually 1 week for me, but usually it lasts for like, I think 2-3 weeks, something like that. But I'm not going to review this pack in the challenge sense, because as with all legendary challenges in Top Drives, every car is going to be useful in some shape or form, if not 90%, right? Especially with those super niche requirements, like how you need to have a Japanese epic, or how you need to have, I think, a Swedish or a French epic, etc., etc. Some cars are in here that you're probably not going to keep in a general sense. You're going to need for the challenge either way. So I'm not going to be judging the Summer Games carbon fiber in a challenge sense, because every car is going to be somewhat useful in the challenge. I'm going to be judging these cars in a general sense, how useful they're going to be for your garage in the long run, and also in clubs, etc., etc. So as per usual, here are my ranks. We welcome back some ranks that I've seen before. We got my number one, bruh, you respectable. I see you. Nah, man, you sus. And of course, the household name in this kind of series, Hot Garbage. Those cars are the worst of the worst. Those are the cars that I would fuse on site. My number one are basically the Blossom choices, the cars that I would max right away, cars I would be happy to get. Bruh, you respectable. You know, they kind of speak for itself. The ranks speak for itself. So let's get into it. The first one is going to be the Subaru Legacy. Now, the Subaru Legacy, I'm going to put in, bruh, you're respectable, okay? I don't think that it deserves to be in that high of a rank if I was judging this pack, I don't know, maybe a month or 2 months from now. But obviously the Subaru is riding on that new update high. Is riding on that new update hype. So because it's a new car, it has that new appeal to it, I'm gonna put it in, bro, you're respectable. That being said though, it is an RQ64, it is medium ground clearance, it is 4-wheel drive, it will surpass for a 90 handling and will go under 5 seconds 0 to 60. It doesn't seem like a bad car, but honestly, if I was wrecking this pack maybe a month from now, maybe I would put it in ICU. I don't have much knowledge of this car yet because it's still brand new, but because it's riding on that hype, I'm putting it on, bro, you're respectable. I mean, most people that would unpack this, that would open this pack and get that car would keep it mainly because it's new, you know, myself included. So it's going to be the same exact rank for the Infiniti Q70. I'm putting it higher than I think it should be, mainly because it's new. Next up on the list though is the Nissan Silvia, and that's gonna be my number one. This thing is pretty good. I've seen it beat the Opel Adam, which is a very good off-roader already. So this looks like a pretty good car. Rear-wheel drive, it handles pretty well. It's kind of be your mid-tier off-roader, right? Obviously on the top we have cars like the Lancia 037, the Porsche 924, the Ford Escort Rally. But if you can't use, you know, 60 plus RQ, the Nissan Silvia is going to be a pretty good bet. And in my opinion, I think it's a better version of the other Nissan Silvia because it handles better. The other Nissan Silvia hits 90. This would hit 92. So I'd rather go for the car that handle better, especially when it comes to off-road. I would always go for the car that handles better, so I would be really happy to get that car. Next up on the list is the Aston Martin DB3S. I'm gonna put that as, bruh, you're respectable. It's a great little all-rounder. It has MRA, it handles well, has a high top speed, but what really is the biggest selling point for the DB3S is that age, is that year, 1963. If you're getting like a pre-60, not a pre-60, 53, yeah, so if you're getting a pre-60 or like a 60s event or a 60 pre-60 event, that is going to be one of the best cars that you can use. Like, it's a fantastic car. I mean, there are epics in this niche, but you know, it being an ultra makes it a lot more accessible. for a lot more players to max. And I think the DB3S is one of the best ultra rare accents in the game. Next up on the list is going to be the BMW 440i. Once again, this is a pretty decent car. I would put it under ICU. Handles well, medium ground clearance, low 0 to 60. But when it comes to city streets, that 440i still isn't going to be my first choice. I'd rather go for the Maloo or the Megane, or if you have the prize cars, I would go for the Alpine, or not even the Alpine, you would just go for the Lancia 037, because that is the best car to use, especially with the handling buff that it got in PL14. So unfortunately, the 440i, usually when it comes to higher RQ medium ground clearance ultras, there are going to be better ultras that you can use. So for that, I'm going to put it under ICU. Next up is the BMW H2R. I'm going to say that's pretty sus. It has no MRA, but it has a high top speed. It handles pretty well. But unfortunately, I have one max and I don't use it that often. So I'm going to put it in non-man use sus. Next is going to be the BMW X5 4.4. And this one is going to be once again non-man use sus. It's honestly borderline hot garbage, but I'm going to put it in non-man use sus because I think that we're going to be encountering cars that are going to be a lot worse. Next up is the Caterham 270. Now what makes the Summer Games pack so special is that you're going to be getting a pack where you can get the Caterham 270 and the Lotus 340R in the same pack. Any pack that has those two cars is immediately not a hot garbage pack, because those are two absolutely fantastic cars. The Caterham needs no introduction. That's my number one. The Dodge Circuit EV is also going to be my number one. This is basically the American Lotus 135. In fact, it beats the Lotus 135 on a lot of track sets. So because of that, I'm going to put it under my number one. Obviously, it's a little more expensive in RQ, but it's only 3, right? It's 50 to 53. Next up is the Dodge Powerbox. The Powerbox is ICU. Once again, man, I really wanted to get off-road tires, but I just feel like that's not gonna happen. Especially how Hutch said that they're going to go with car corrections. In the PL14 patch notes, they said if a car needs significant corrections, they're just gonna introduce that car as a brand new car and they'll change the Powerbox to something else. So basically, they'll change the Powerbox to something that has those Powerbox stats, and they'll add a new Powerbox that nobody has, just to, you know, kind of even out the balancing, if that makes sense. So yeah, the Powerbox, ICU. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still 4-wheel drive. It still handles pretty well, to be fair, and it is the highest handling Dodge off-roader. So because of that, it's not trash, but you're not going to be in many situations where you can use the Powerbox. There are better options out there. So ICU is a place to put it. Next up are going to be these dongs, and I absolutely hate these dongs. I'm going to put them as non-man use sus for both of them. There's just no situation where you need them. For that RQ, especially for 53, I'd rather use the Circuit EV. I mean, when you look at it, they're both 53. The Circuit EV has a lower 0 to 60 and handles so much better. I mean, 77 to 84, that's night and day. That's like a 7 handling difference. So I'd rather go with the Circuit EV any day of the week. Next up is the DS7 Crossback. That's going to be ICU. I do love the 4-wheel drive standard tire niche, but the problem with the DS7 is that it doesn't handle. It has a low 0 to 60 for its niche, but it doesn't really handle. And when it comes to, you know, the twisty rain, I would want 4-wheel drive standard and handling of at least around the 80s, and a lot of ultra rares with 4-wheel drive and standards are capable of hitting the 80s, but the DS7 isn't one of them. So unfortunately, it's just decent. Next up is going to be the GMC Sierra All-Terrain X. Once again, it's a ICU kind of car, just because it's just so close in RQ to the Colorado, and the Colorado is just a much better car. At the end of the day, when it comes to ultra, you know, high RQ off-roaders, you want to either use the Colorado or the 037. There really isn't a place and a time for the GMC Sierra All-Terrain. So unfortunately, the highest I can put it is average. Honda NSX, once again, it's a very average car. The Hummer H3, once again, is a very average car. The Hummer H3 is kind of like the Sierra, but just a lot cheaper in RQ and a lot worse in stats. Moving on the list is the Jaguar XJR. That's going to be our first hot garbage, which pains me, to be honest, because I have this max. I like the car, but I have to be real with you guys. Never needed to use it once. Even when it was like that great exhibition efficient saloon phase, I never needed to use it. You would use the Rapide S, or maybe some of the Jags, the higher RQ Jags, never the XJR. Very unfortunate, it's hot garbage. Lotus 340R needs no introduction, absolutely fantastic. The Quattroporte, hot garbage. The Mazda CX-9, now this one I'm gonna put in bruh, you're respectable. You see what I mean? This is a car that's able to hit 80, and it has four-wheel drive, and it has thinner tires, and it has the same RQ as the DS7. At the end of the day, I would choose the CX-9 over the DS7 any day of the week, so it makes sense to put the CX-9 over the DS7. Next up is the 370Z Roadster. This car looks pretty decent, so I'll put it in ICU. It's basically the Japanese version of the Pontiac Solstice. You can search it up. This and the Pontiac Solstice, same stats, same 0 to 60, same handling, but the Nissan 370Z has a 1-up over the Solstice because it's a convertible. So, you know, it's one extra niche, that's what I'm trying to say. Next up is the Opel OPC Extremis, bruh, you're respectable. It's a car with those stats and that RQ where you think I would put under my number one, but it seems to underperform for me. So because of that, it's bruh, you're respectable. Next up is the Peugeot 208 GTI. It's nah, man, you kind of sus. It's not hot garbage because it handles okay and it's really light, but the 0 to 60 is very, very slow. Next up on the list is the Pontiac. That is hot garbage. The Rover Sport is, you know, it's pretty sus. The Range Rover Sport, though, the other one from 2018, that is hot garbage. Moving on is the Roof 3400S. That's going to be ICU. Once again, much like the Opel OPC, it just, I don't know, man. There's never an opportunity where I feel like I need to use the 3400S. It's a little bit of an all-rounder, and the handling isn't bad either. It's just that I always end up in a situation where there's always a better car to use. There's a car that just handles a little better, or the MRA is a little better, or the 0 to 60 is a little lower, or the top speed is a little higher. So unfortunately, it's just an average car. There are not a lot of situations where I actually end up using the Roof 3400S. Next up is the TVR S Series. Now this one might stir some heads. I'm putting it in bruh, you're respectable. 452 RQ, that is a great bang for your buck. I always use this as kind of like my hybrid all-rounder car in clubs for the lower RQ ultra range. So usually if there's like a hairpin or a fast circuit, I like to use that TVR. I think it's a great little all-rounder because it's capable of hitting 88 handling at 233, but it also has a really low 0 to 60 of 4.1. 4.1 88 for RQ52, bruh. That's literally respectable. Next up on the list is the Volvo XC90, and that's just gonna be sus, to be honest. And now we move on to the Epics. So the Ultras are done, so now let's move on to the Epics. The first one is the Suzuki, and I'm gonna put the Suzuki on the bruh, respectable. Much like the rest of the other JPT cars, I don't think any of these are going to be like straight up blossom choices, but I would say that the Suzuki, even if it didn't have the hype, would stay under bruh, respectable. It's super lightweight, it handles really well. It's just a JPT version of the Dodge Sidewinder, right? And it's a very decent car. Not great, but very decent. Moving up on the list is the Infiniti Emerge. Now the Infiniti Emerge looks like a really good car. For RQ67, you're getting 99 handling and 3.40 to 60. 3499 for RQ67 is really, really impressive. So for that, I'm gonna put it as my number one, just on those base stats alone. The Infiniti all-wheel drive, yeah, it's kind of sus, to be fair. I'm not gonna put it any higher than that. The Acura is average. The Audi is incredibly niche, so I'm gonna put it in sus, because when do you ever need a four-wheel drive SUV performance tire car? Almost never. Followed by that are gonna be the two BMW i8s. Both of these cars are very decent. I will put the 79 as my number one, and the Roadster as bruh, you're respectable, because of the stats, right? This is just a little faster. I know that this is a convertible, but considering that they're only one RQ apart, I'd go for the i8. Next up is the Cadillac CT6. This one needs no introduction. That's a blossom choice and also my number one. Followed by that is the XT5. It's a very average car. It handles pretty decently, and as you can see, it's a little cheaper compared to the all-wheel drive Infiniti, and it has 2 points higher in grip, making it very, very cool. Next up is the Donkey D8. Now that is my number one for sure. 2.90 to 60 if I remember correctly. 98 handling. That's a car to keep. Next up on the list is the Ford Fusion Sport. I'm going to put it alongside... I think I'm going to put it alongside the Acura. A part of me wants to put it in bruh, you're respectable, but there hasn't really been an opportunity where I needed to use the Ford Fusion Sport. For 72 RQ, for the most part, I'd rather go 3 RQ more and use a DS numero 9, or I never thought I would say this, I'd find myself using a Volkswagen CC, because the Volkswagen CC is also 7273 and it handles a lot better. It gets like, I think, 87, something like that. So, you know, I'd rather use that. So unfortunately, the Fusion Sport is average. I really like the car though. Moving on is the Infiniti G35. That's going to be pretty sus. Followed by that is the Jaguar XGR. That's going to be average. The Jaguar XKR 175 is going to be hot garbage. It's going to help you in the challenge. But like I said at the start of the video, all of these cars are going to help you in the challenge. In a general sense, in my opinion, that is a trash car. Next up is the Land Rover Defender Works V8. That is going to be my number 1. Followed by the Peugeot SR1, which is just really average. The Boxster GTS is going to be pretty sus. I mean, for 69, 4185 is kind of like the benchmark for all RQ69s. It's just going to end up, what, 3494? Like all the other cars? Something like that. 3494, 3594, something along those lines. Next up is the super long name, the Evoque Dynamic S, whatever the hell it is, that's hot garbage. The Volvo S90 is also going to be hot garbage. And the Volvo XC60 T8, now that's going to be a respectable car. It handles well, and it's not the lightest weight. Don't get me wrong, it's not the lightest weight SUV, but compared to other SUVs in the game, it's average. It's not light, but it's not incredibly heavy. It's just average, and it handles really well. 0 to 60 is okay as well. Now, moving on to the legendaries. The epics are wrapped up. Let's start with the Nissan R381. That's going to be my number 1. I know for a fact that that thing has bonkers MRA. Leo unpacked one, surprisingly enough. Incredibly lightweight, you know, amazing MRA, definitely a keeper. Same with the Nissan's Silvia Super Silhouette. I'm gonna put that as my number 1. The Aero Atom 4, my number 1. DBS Superleggera, my number 1. You know what? A lot of these legendaries are actually very decent. The Ford GT, however, is ICU. Yeah, that one's a pretty trash one. But the other Ford GT is my number 1. The TWR, my number 1. Koenigsegg CC8. Okay, this one's actually brilliant. Respectable. I don't think that's a number 1 legendary. All of these are good in their own right. The Aero Atom super light, handles really well. The Aston Martin handles well as well as the Aero Atom, and it has like 105 MRA. The Audi R8, it's a great all-rounder. The ATS-V is one of the best saloons, medium ground clearance. Ford GT is like one of the best American legendaries in the game. The TWR has an MRA from hell. So all of these cars are just really great. The CC8S, I mean, it's the worst Koenigsegg, right? So I don't think it's still a legendary at the end of the day. It's a car that you want to keep, but it's definitely not my number 1. And the Ford GT, I have to say, it's sus. It's very sus. The CCXR, to be honest, I'm gonna put it with the other Koenigsegg on the brilliant respectable. It's just that it's not the best in its category. I guess it's a bit of a hindrance, right? That it's not the best Koenigsegg, and its competitions are literally Koenigsegg's, which are like the pinnacle of performance in the game. Next up is the Mercedes Electric. That's sus. That's sus. And the Nissan GTR is ICU. It's a very average legendary. If anything, this is just a Japanese version of a Lamborghini, right? Doesn't handle, very low 0 to 60, 4-wheel drive, but no MRA. So, you know, it's a Japanese Lamborghini. Next up is the Peugeot EX1. That's going to be my number 1. And last but not least, the GT2 RS. You know, wrapping things up, is going to be number 1. It's 100 MRA on that thing. It goes over 100 handling. Fantastic car. EX1, you know, it has a super low 0 to 60 4-wheel drive. Amazing legendary to get. So in the end, this is going to be basically my ranking of these summer games. Not a lot of hot garbage, but obviously I am being a bit lenient. I feel like a lot of you might put a lot of the sus cars in hot garbage, and I would say that I would be okay with that. Summer Games pack. So at the end of the day, should you open it? To be honest, the Summer Games pack isn't that bad. You are getting some really amazing cars, or you have a chance at getting some really amazing cars, such as the Circuit, the 340R, the 270, the CT6, the Aerial Atom 4. You also have a chance at getting some really cool JPT legendaries, like the Nissan R381 and the Silvia Super Silhouette. Those two are actually really enticing. You know, they handle well, they're very lightweight. Unfortunately, none of them actually hit 100 handling, which is a bit of a downside. But you are getting some really good cars. The ATS, one of the best saloons in the game. Ford GT, one of the best American legendaries in the game. You get cars like the TWR and the GT2, which have MRAs in the hundreds. So you are getting some really good cars. But obviously, with every pack, there are some stinkers in here as well, you know, like the donkeys and the Range Rover Sports, the Maserati, the Pontiac. But at the end of the day, when you look at the scale, there are more cars in the top half than there are cars in the bottom half. So my verdict is, if you have nothing else that you really want to open, this is actually a pretty decent pack to open, not only for the challenge, but in a general sense. Am I going to open any? No, I'm not. But that's mainly because the Viper finals are going on right now, and I need to funnel all of my resources at the Viper's direction. So because of that, that's going to be my review. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. If you found this video helpful, consider hitting the subscribe button. But I hope you guys have a great day. I'm gonna stay safe, wash your hands, and blossom out. Peace.
I bring the toast in the back and we going berserk with the guns on the rack, and we taking it count to the sound of the crack. Running from us with the pop and the, cause we making the moves and the sounds of P. Calling the shots of bitch looking at me, and we taking it count to the flow in the back with the drop in the cash, you know this ain't a prank. Moving like water, talking with fire, bounce back on the cover to mama's inside. Keep riding the flames like a man on a mission, rejected again, but you better go listen. Pop up at Billy, run up the Billy, my face on the boards and you all gonna see me. I work my wrist to look dicey as Yachty, flexing the club, something sincerely Louis. Hey, yeah. Hey, yeah. What you gonna think of me? I hit it from the back. My people play the kill mode, standing on attack. Cause I'm part of double sixes, all the ladies wanna do me. Haters say they wanna do me, bitch, I'm chillin' in jacuzzi. Know we always get it done, right?